It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This is the Locked On Auburn podcast, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast, presented by Fetch Me. They're run by an alum of Auburn, and they have the greatest variety of restaurants to order and get your meal delivered throughout Auburn and Opelika. And if you're looking to have your family meal delivered in less than 40 minutes, go no farther than to Fetch Me. Fetch Me has a great selection of anything you want, including your favorite restaurants, groceries, coffee. They'll even do your dry cleaning, people. So, Fetch Me being the best in the business, go to fetchmedelivery.com or use their app and use promo code FetchMe20 for your first delivery free. I'm Zach Blockerby, joined by my good friend, Painter Sharpless. Hello, sir.
How we doing?
We're good. And Michael Pappas. Hey! You're so far from the mic, but that is okay.
Whoa! It's Friday!
Painter, on the Thursday show, the theme of it was, we're on to Ole Miss.
Hey, we're on to Ole Miss.
We're on to Ole Miss.
Look, good team. They've obviously beaten no one. They're one-dimensional offensively. They've stopped no offense. Great opponent. Really, really need to be in tune for this one. And also,
Are you quoting Gus Malzahn?
So on Tuesday, Gus would lead you to believe that this was a good team, and I'm fine with it. I get it. Coaches don't want to make waves. This is not a good Ole Miss team, as the spread would indicate. Auburn should win this game. They ought to come out, I think, really kind of angry after the way they lost that game. I don't see how this Ole Miss team, in all seriousness, can stack up against Auburn.
What do you think is more true of Malzahn? What he spoke of, Ole Miss being a good football team, or what he said in the preseason about Joey Gatewood being a big part of the offense?
I guess I would assume Joey Gatewood.
We're on to Ole Miss. We're on to Ole Miss.
I think I would assume that he at some point thought he'd be using Joey Gatewood. There's no part of me that actively believes that he thinks Ole Miss is a cumulative good team. Like if you put the special teams together, if you put every unit of the defense and every part of the offense together, and you take all three of those groups, you go, that's a good team. So maybe he thinks they could lose like they did to Tennessee last year, but they're not a good team. Losing to them doesn't necessarily mean that they're good.
They're average.
Yeah.
They're average.
Coming up on the show, Justin Ferguson is going to join us, and he's going to preview the Auburn basketball scrimmage that is happening tonight. A lot of excitement about that. But before he gets here, we'll chat about Ole Miss. And we got a few voicemails to get to. Painter, have you been on since we've had the voicemails?
Once. I think the first time we did it, and I believe we had a great response after the LSU game, right? Seems
yes.
like that would be the case.
Well, here's our favorite one so far. This happened actually right after the LSU game.
Hey, guys.
What are your thoughts?
That's it?
Yeah, you want to hear it again?
Hey, guys.
Cracks me up.
Just couldn't, started to talk about the pain. They always say you should open up, and then couldn't do it.
Yeah. Hey, and if you want to call us before, during, after the Ole Miss game this weekend, 205-502-4285. All right, we got two legitimate ones to get to. Here's the you want to go the longer one first or the shorter one
Let's
first?
go long.
Long?
Hey, guys, it's Justin. I'm in Nashville. I've lived in Tennessee my whole life, been an Auburn fan my whole life, just because of Bo Jackson. So, as far as the coaching change goes, or possibility of a coaching change would be better said, don't be afraid of losing out on okay to good, possibly great, to get consistently great from your coaching staff. I think that Gus Malzahn is a good human being. I think Gus Malzahn is a good coach. I think what he is, without a transcendent talent at quarterback, is an 8-win coach in this league. That's what I think. For the money that Auburn pays him, he has to be a bottom-line 10-win coach every year. It might be this year. Not saying that you fire him this year, but the idea of who do you go get? Come on, man. I don't know. The next version of the greatness coach, I don't know the answer. I just know that you can't be afraid to be bad to get great. And I just, as an Auburn fan, I would like to be in the conversation every year as a national title contender. Love the podcast, guys. Thanks.
I will not take any sort of coaching advice from anyone who lives in Tennessee, because you should know, just from the big state school where you live, firing a coach and going and getting another one doesn't necessarily mean that your team is going to get better.
Yeah,
Tennessee has been.
I do get the argument of where he's coming from. Of, okay, do you want to be above average and be good every few years, or do you want to take a chance and possibly get the next big thing? I get where he's coming from, though, and I think you could argue that's kind of what Auburn did with Malzahn.
I don't really agree with that. I mean, Chiswick went 3-9.
That's fair. I think we all can agree that the Chiswick would not have consistently gone 3-9.
Yeah, but Chiswick had the national championship season and then got consistently worse for the next 2 years. And I mean, we don't really have to go back down that road. We don't need to relive 2012.
We're on to Ole Miss. Do you have something, Painter?
Also, Nick Marshall is not a transcendent talent at quarterback.
Are we doing this again?
No, we're on to Ole Miss. We're not doing this.
This came back up. Dave McKinney, friend of the lunch break, brought this up because yesterday in Birmingham, a radio sports announcer talked about him getting worse his second season. It is not true. If you thought that Nick Marshall was good when Auburn went to the national title with that not statistically good defense, and then you just go Nick Marshall stats into Google, it will pull up Sports Reference. It will compare the 2013 and the 2014 season. If you are capable of reading, 2014 is better. Anyway,
we're on Ole Miss.
I like the...
Okay, hold on.
No, I don't want to do this, guys.
No,
I don't want to do the whole Nick Marshall thing.
I'm not trying to argue with you, but there's a big difference between Cam Newton and Nick Marshall. Cam Newton is a transcendent talent at quarterback. Nick Marshall was a good quarterback for Auburn, but he was not a transcendent talent.
I don't know, man. He was a dang good
He
college
played defensive
quarterback.
back, and then he took a team that threw 7 passes against Tennessee. They won by 40 points. I don't understand. He was almost in the Heisman voting, and he probably should have been. Not for Trey Mason, I think, kind of, and good for Trey, but it's neither here nor there. I like the nuance of that call because one, he acknowledges that where Auburn really is. One of the things I hear most about Auburn is this sort of unrealistic expectation about where they are in the pecking order right now, I think, of the national landscape. And also, there is obviously a floor for Auburn, and then there's a ceiling for Auburn. And I think a lot of people want to raise that ceiling, but there's some concern about just what Michael brought up, and that's that if you look around, sometimes coaching changes cause a real deal of instability. You don't always get better with coaching changes. It's exciting. It's sort of like the thing with the backup quarterback. Like, they're usually the most popular guy on campus until they've made a mistake. And so the argument of good versus great is one that administration and fans are going to have to wrestle with. And I think a lot of fans have had that argument and they know what they want. But the administration, it's not so simple for them. I don't have a problem with the amount of money that Auburn's giving Gus Malzahn. I think you can afford it. You want to compete for championships. It sends the message that you're willing to pay top dollar. What I have a problem with is the buyout. That's the problem. I don't mind that they're paying a coach who's been to 2 national titles, 3 SEC championships, and is the only coach in the league to have beaten Nick Saban. There is real value in that. Plus, he's often doing it with talent that is not as great as LSU, Georgia, and Alabama. He's recruiting well. He's the 4th highest paid coach in the conference. So most years you should probably be the 3rd or 4th best team in the conference. I do think, though, it is worth having a conversation about, can you raise the ceiling? Can you consistently get to 9, 10, 11 wins a year? And most coaches at Auburn have not been able to do that. There was a stretch in the Dye era where they did that. Otherwise, not so much. Malzahn's probably the next best thing, and at least about every 4 years, he's getting you to Atlanta. And that this conference that often results in either a BCS championship or a playoff berth.
Yeah.
And then the final thing I would say, and this is a good point on his part because I know a lot of fans make it, is I'm a fan of this Auburn team. I care about it, et cetera, et cetera. And then it ends with the statement, I want to be competitive and compete for championships every year. That's a pretty common thing I hear from fans. They have been every year going into November except 2015. Now, for a lot of fans, that's not good enough because 2 of your biggest rivals you play in November. So not only have you lost contention by the end of the month and playing for a championship, it's because you've lost to the 2 teams everyone wants to beat the most.
Mm-hmm. Do you think that possibly changes with Georgia not being at the end of the schedule moving forward?
I think it's about the same because LSU is becoming a real eyesore for Auburn, especially where they can't win in Baton Rouge. But it's now.
But that's only going to be next year, where it's LSU than Alabama.
But I think that's now bleeding in together because LSU's won 3 straight.
Yeah.
And it's starting to get to the point, it's not as bad, but Georgia's really owned that series since the turn of the century. And if LSU wins a couple more, it's going to start feeling
It's going to feel like that. You're right.
So, you're right, it's different. And you're right, it's not a long-term thing. I think sometime around 2025, they'll reshuffle the schedule. And I'm hoping they'll move to the pod system, but we can have a whole different podcast about that.
Podcast on pods.
Yeah, that was a really good voicemail because he hit a number of different areas and like why this is such a tough decision for people like Alan Green.
And props to him being in Tennessee and being an Auburn fan his whole life. That's tough. Good for him. All right, let's.
Props to him for not being afraid that Auburn might go out and hire Butch Jones. Not actually Butch Jones, but the next Butch Jones.
Yeah. All right, here's the other one.
Hey guys, Tony and Savannah.
Tony.
Real quick, before we move on to Ole Miss, what would you guys think about bumping Kevin Steele up to head coach if Malzahn wants to get let go? Appreciate it.
I'm sort of indifferent about this part. The thing that I
just real quick. I'm sorry. First off, Tony, we're on to Ole Miss. All right, go ahead. Go ahead.
He acknowledged as much.
I know he did.
So a lot of Auburn fans don't seem to get how coaching changes work. A lot of people are really thrilled with the defensive effort, as they should be, because it's one of the best in the country. But if Gus Malzahn goes anywhere, unless Kevin Steele is promoted, the staff is gone. Like, that's something that's an interesting part of the coaching conversation. I hear a lot of people say bring in a new coach, but keep the defensive staff. That won't happen. Now, that's not what Tony suggested, but
yeah.
I just want to make that clarification. Some Auburn fans seem to not be aware that coaches very rarely, sometimes they will hold on to someone for recruiting purposes, but they don't retain staff. They usually bring their own staff in.
Michael and I talked about this yesterday. When Malzahn came in, Rodney Garner was there. So he didn't have to hire a defensive line. I still hasn't had to. And I kind of wonder if there are certain position guys that would survive the coaching change. I have a hard time seeing Travis Williams going anywhere.
There's probably a few you could make an argument for. Williams is one, too, that you think could be an up-and-comer in the coaching ranks. And so it's like, well, maybe you whether you promote him to DC, I don't know. But I think that's not what Tony was saying, but I just wanted to put that out there. And then the other part of that conversation is I don't think that'll happen.
Right.
And it's a totally different program, and Baylor's actually having some success now, and they hadn't yet, but when Steele was the head coach there, it did not go well.
Yeah, there's another element of this I want to discuss, but Painter, you got to read for us first.
Talking about erectile dysfunction isn't easy. I beg to differ. Usually, we just brush it off or blame ourselves, saying things like, I lost my mojo. Or we avoid it altogether with excuses like, I had a long day at work, or sorry, honey, I'm just not feeling it. But with Roman, it is easy to talk about it with a real doctor who can prescribe real medication. It's simple, safe, and totally discreet. With Roman, you can get a free online evaluation and ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. Just go to GetRoman.com/locked to get a free online visit and free 2-day shipping. That's GetRoman.com/locked for a free visit to get started. GetRoman.com/locked.
Finding the right pros for home projects can be tough and spark a lot of questions, like, how do I find a pro who can help? Will they do a good job? Will I get a fair price? Well, that's where HomeAdvisor can help. From leaky faucets to major remodels, HomeAdvisor connects you to the right pro for the job in seconds and even helps you get a fair price. Read reviews, check project cost guides, and book appointments. Go to HomeAdvisor.com or download the free HomeAdvisor app to start your next project.
When you're finished with today's episode, the Locked On Podcast Network has an amazing national show lineup for you. Every Monday, the new Hollinger and Duncan NBA show brings you insight from former NBA executive and analytics guru John Hollinger. Rejecting the Screen brings you 2 episodes a week with fun NBA talk and a long-form interview every Thursday. Your daily 30-minute NBA show is Locked On NBA, updating you on the previous night's action and looking ahead to what's next. The Locked On Podcast Network All-Star National Lineup, Hollinger and Duncan NBA Show, Rejecting the Screen, and Locked On NBA.
So circling back to the voicemail on Kevin Steele being promoted. I think if Malzahn were to get let go before the season ends, I think he's the interim. But I don't think that's going to happen unless he loses to a team in Ole Miss tomorrow. I just have a hard time, and I think you guys agree. We have a hard time seeing that happen. I think he's going to finish the season regardless. So I don't think Kevin Steele being bumped up to interim is a relevant conversation.
Agreed, and I don't think he's that interested in doing it either. I think there's just so much more that is involved with being a head coach.
Well, we saw him go to Tennessee and interview for the head coaching job.
Which surprised me a lot.
Same.
I don't think that's something that he's dying to take on.
Yeah.
I think he is nearing the end of his career. Like if you told me in 5 years, say Gus is still coaching here in 5 years, which that would be wild. I think eventually he would step down and Travis Williams would get promoted.
How many days do you guys think we're going to talk about this next week?
What?
Coach. Oh, excuse me.
Wow.
Coaching changes.
I hope not a lot.
I don't think it'll be a ton next week.
This week, Monday, and kind of Tuesday, we talked about LSU and coaching in the LSU game, right?
We're on to Ole Miss, man.
Tuesday and Wednesday was a lot of Joey Gatewood. And then yesterday, we just said we're on to Ole Miss for the first half of the show and then talked about coaching for the second half. And now on Friday, we're on to Ole Miss and have also talked about coaching for the entire time.
But the thing is, we are on to Ole Miss.
Yeah, exactly. And then
a good team.
Yeah.
Auburn is favored by almost 3 touchdowns in the game tomorrow. So if Auburn comes out and dominates the game, you think next week we're talking about the same thing?
Well, we're going to be on to the bye week.
We'll be focusing on rest.
Well, we're not.
And defeating it.
We're going to be focusing on ourselves.
No, we're not on to the next one until the press conference on Tuesday.
You're right. Damn. So right now we're still on Ole Miss.
You got me. I think, the Kevin Steele thing I think is probably sort of irrelevant because I think Gus finishes the season almost certainly. Like that's not even something I'm considering.
I mean, I think Gus is the coach
next year. That's how I feel too. And so I think unless not only does he, I think he'd have to lose badly to Georgia and Alabama where the offenses look like they have against LSU and Florida, maybe worse, and they just get absolutely skunked at home.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think George is capable on offense of scoring enough points to make it look
not against Auburn's defense.
Yeah, they're not going to score 40 and Auburn's going to have a bad day and they're going to win by 30. I don't see that unless it's not happening.
So here's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
This will actually Gus not getting fired this offseason fits with my timeline perfectly.
Are you the next head coach at Auburn?
No, but
okay.
This is what I'm going to will into existence.
All right.
Graham Harrell. Most likely the whole staff is getting fired at USC after this season. Graham Harrell gets a nice, cushy G5 job, lights it up for 1, maybe 2 seasons there as the head coach. Boom, we got Graham Harrell on campus in Auburn, head coach.
I would be a lot less surprised if Auburn got another member of the USC coaching staff.
Clay Helton?
Clay Helton. Because Auburn loves to hire people that have been to Auburn. I'm just saying.
If Auburn hires Clay Helton, I'm getting a new job.
Not as a head coach, but I would not be shocked if he's on the coaching staff next year. That's all I'm saying.
As what? Just like classy idiot?
I don't know. You're not a fan? You're not a fan of Helton?
No, he's horrible.
But he's an Auburn guy. That's what Auburn people are all about.
What does it mean to be an Auburn man?
I can tell
have any kind of affiliation with Auburn.
That phrase is one that we could do without. Please continue with the relevant conversation.
What you just did right here in studio, not an Auburn man.
I tooted. It smells terrible.
And then spent the last
Hey guys,
minute
That is amazing, whoever you are. Thank you. I'm sorry that you were clearly choked up after an ugly game of football.
He called back, and gosh, I wish I remembered his name. Tweet at us. He listens every day. He's fantastic. Yeah, please tweet at us again. But he called back, and he's like, my voice is a little bit better now, so I went to the game.
Are you sure, sir?
I just love that he called and tried to get through it. He's like, hey, guys. And then he's like, I can't do this. And he's like, I love it so much.
What do you think he was yelling the most about during that game for his voice to be
Didn't he say
raspy?
his wife had to leave?
I don't know.
There were two different people on our show on the lunch break that said that. I think it was Brian and Russell. Both their wives got out of the room and left while they were watching the LSU game.
Oh, my wife was very upset with me watching the game.
I mean, tough, you know. There's a lot of things you could be mad at the team you support, or you could be mad at the way it was officiated, both legitimately.
Yeah, I don't feel bad about it. So
Sorry, I party.
whatever. Sorry, I party.
So where are we on the Kevin Steele thing? That's a nay for a number of different reasons.
I like the idea of it. I just don't think the timeline works because he's getting close to the end of his career. And then also, I don't think he'd be interim because I don't think Malzahn is going to get fired. And if he were to get let go, I think it would be after the season is over.
Yeah.
So
it's not advantageous for Auburn to cut him at this point in the year.
I am very on board with it if he hires Graham Harrell as his offensive coordinator.
you love Graham Harrell.
I'm all about Graham.
What do you love more,
Gus
Graham
is gonna
Harrell or
run his
Texas?
stuff, dog.
No,
Like you know
Texas,
he's
but you know where Graham Harrell's from?
He's from Texas.
Yeah.
like I'd love it if they were like, hey, let's go get Joe Brady, but Gus is going to keep running his stuff. That's why I think like whoever you bring in is fine. I get the appeal you have of bringing in a guy like Harrell, but. And I think you're also saying like if Gus goes like to make him, do you want him?
Oh
to,
no, I do not want Gus to bring in Graham Harrell with Gus still on staff.
So you're saying make the jump is if
Yeah.
Gus goes in a year or two. I see.
Yeah.
Because
I don't think it matters who's the OC if Gus is still
Yeah,
at Auburn.
he's going to run his stuff.
But I think Malzahn's at Auburn next year and the following year.
I definitely
honestly.
think he's here next year. I'm not as willing to say the year after yet.
Okay.
I'm curious to see how recruiting goes, and right now it's going really well. I'm curious to know how they finished the last month, because if they beat Georgia and Alabama, two things that I think are realistic, by the way. You win 10 games in the regular season. Your two losses come to right now number 6 and number 1 in the country on the road. As inept as the offense looked, you're going to feel bad about beating your two biggest rivals recruiting well. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Do you want to do the read?
I'd love to.
All right.
Do it.
I've been trying to think of a good segue for the whole show.
Just start reading it. That's all you got to do.
Talking about erectile dysfunction isn't easy. Usually we just brush it off or blame ourselves, saying things like, I lost my mojo. Or we avoid it altogether with excuses like, I had a long day at work, or sorry, honey, I'm just not feeling it. But with Roman, it is easy to talk about it. With a real doctor who can prescribe real medication. It's simple, safe, and totally discreet. The whole process is straightforward, simple, and discreet. I just said that. I'm so confused.
Drive the point home, brother.
Getting started is simple. Just go to GetRoman.com/locked and complete an online visit. Erectile dysfunction used to be tough to tackle, but now there's Roman. Complete an online visit today to connect with the doctor and take care of it. Just go to Roman.com/locked to get a free online visit and free 2-day shipping. That's GetRoman.com/locked for a free visit to get started. GetRoman.com/locked.
Fantastic. Well done. Let us know who you think had the read better, Painter Sharpless or Michael Pappas.
Hey, it's Noah Kozlov from Rejecting the Screen, and every week, Adam Stenko and I go ISO. This week, it's with NBA champion Richard Jefferson. We asked him to describe what it was like coming into the league and playing right away with Jason Kidd in New Jersey.
Jason Kidd made you a full point better just by being on the court with him, right? So if you were a 7, you were going to be an 8. If you were an 8, you were going to be a 9. Like, that's who he was as a player. I stand by this. Magic Johnson at 6'9" was able to make passes, and maybe without a Magic Johnson, maybe there isn't a Jason Kidd, right? Because the no looks, all these different things. To me, Jason Kidd is the greatest passer of all time.
For more stories on and off the court, subscribe to Rejecting the Screen wherever you get your podcasts.
Your team
What's up, everybody? Welcome into Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Bucks.
Locked On Raptors.
Locked On Nuggets podcast.
every day.
On Monday.
It's Taco Tuesday!
On this Wednesday.
Thursday looks great. Starting this Friday.
When it comes to the biggest stories,
The leading storyline to watch for. A couple things from the preseason have kind of piqued my interest even more in terms of how good this team can be.
Draymond spoke with the media after the game, and I thought he had the right outlook when it comes to this.
No, that, means precisely nothing in the grand scheme of winning a championship, I guess, but
you need to be locked on.
That is LOCKEDON.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
In the Apple Podcast app.
Google Podcasts.
Spotify.
It's all coming up on today's edition of Locked On Jazz. Ow!
Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Joined in studio now by the one and only Justin Ferguson of The Athletic.
He
Justin,
smiles.
how are you, friend?
What's up?
Are you pumped for basketball tonight?
I am. I'm very, very, very intrigued by this roster. I know it's just going to be an exhibition tonight against Eckerd, but there's a lot to really find out about this Auburn basketball team in this pretty easy non-conference schedule, and it starts with this exhibition. And by the way, I mean Auburn lost an exhibition game 2 years ago and still won the SEC. So
that's true.
These things could get really weird. But we'll see, especially how they're having to sort out this roster.
So what do you expect them to do from a personnel standpoint? Do you expect kind of what we'll see tonight to be the normal rotation, or do you think they're going to experiment more? Because, I mean, it sounds like with that secret scrimmage that they had with Troy, I guess a week or so ago, they tried a crazy amount of different personnel groupings.
Yeah, I mean, I think tonight this is where you get closer, usually in these exhibitions, to, in the first half, what you're going to probably do.
Okay.
You might run your normal first half rotations in the first half, and then in the second half, if it's out of reach, then start experimenting with some different lineups, put some more walk-ons into the game. I mean, Auburn's got 20 guys on their roster this year once you count all the walk-ons. So like there's plenty of opportunities for guys to get into this game.
What do you think the relevant rotation is here? Do you think it's 9 or 10?
Yeah, this is where things are going to get really interesting because I think they're going to have a main 8. And then it's going to be, I think, situationally how you put out other guys. So if you go with the thought process that the starting lineup will most likely be Javon McCormick at point guard, Samir Dowdy at shooting guard, Isaac Okoro at small forward, D'Angelo Purifoy probably at the 4, at the power forward spot, and then either Austin Wiley or Anthony McLemore at the 5. This is that question mark right there is going to be interesting to me because Anthony started over Austin pretty much. Most of the last 2 years.
Yeah.
But Austin, they're looking to Austin to be a bigger part of this offense. Play a bigger role on the team this year in his senior year, and it's Anthony's senior year too. But they're already trying to play him more at the 4 as well. So there might be some lineups this year, there's rotations where you see Anthony and Austin on the floor at the same time.
What's the benefit of D'Angelo getting more time at the 4?
I mean, it's just kind of
he's a natural 3, right?
Right, but there's a lot of guys out there on the wing, and you don't have a lot at the 4. Like, yeah, I'm sure D'Angelo will play the 3 some when Anthony's at the 4, but that's kind of that stretch 4 position is where they want. They want D'Angelo to be role type, kind of like what they did with Chuma. That's the kind of – they want to be able to still play 4 out. They still want to be able to have a ball handling, shooting 4. It's just the question I think a lot of people are going to have is how are they going to defend? Did he step up enough to play, more big men this season? And the counter to that is when you have Isaac Okoro at the 3, you can get a little bit more creative in how you use D'Angelo defensively, I think.
Who do you think is going to be Auburn's leading scorer this year? Is it Javon or Samir, or is it one of the younger guys?
I think Samir Dowdy's probably your best bet because he's your top scorer coming back from last season. He can hit from pretty much anywhere on the floor in terms of like he's comfortable shooting threes. He's comfortable getting to the rim. That's something that he's worked on a ton this offseason. He's just got a variety of ways of scoring, whereas we haven't seen a ton from some of these other guys in terms of just being as versatile as scorers yet. That's probably where I was going. Javon McCormick will be interesting. I want to see how much his offensive game grows this year. they're going to want D'Angelo to score a lot. Like that's a priority for this coaching staff. So it could be him. It's just I like Samir with the best mix of, he's the most efficient 3-point shooter on the team last season, and a guy who is already a pretty established as a slasher and getting to the rim and getting a shot.
When Javon is not on the floor, who do you think are some candidates to take the ball down the floor?
Turbo Jones is probably going to be your number one guy coming off the bench. I wouldn't be surprised to see Samir be a primary ball handler in some rotations this season. But they really like Turbo, and they really like what he brings to the table. And when people ask, what's his game, I'm not saying talent-wise, but his style is very much a cross between Jared Harper and Bryce Brown, and the fact that he's a really fast playmaker. But he's also got a really good jump shot from the outside. He can play that one or the two. He's a combo guard that is at home being the primary, fast-paced ball handler, and also playing off the ball and being able to shoot. So he's going to be fun to watch. It might take him a little time to get going, but I like his game because he's a great ball handler. He's a great primary point guy. But also, if Auburn wants to put him in the game with Javon and start staggering up, maybe go a little bit smaller, he's a guy who can come off the ball and shoot as well. He's got a really good jump shot, and he's going to be a lot of fun to watch. If
Auburn's going to make a run similar to how they've done the past 2 years in the postseason, they're going to need a lot from their younger guys, obviously.
Right, exactly.
What's a realistic timeline as far as bringing them along? Because you don't really have anybody in the non-conference that you can say, okay, all right, let's see how we stack up at this point of the season to folks. I mean, your best non-conference game arguably is part of the SEC Big 12 Challenge, and that's after the SEC already starts.
Right, and then we'll see what NC State's like this year when they come to Auburn. But maybe you play Wisconsin in Brooklyn. Other than that, it's a pretty light slate, and I think part of that's kind of by design for Auburn because they gotta get so many guys going. Not only, I think one of the key things about this team is not only are they bringing new guys in and bringing them along, they're also having to give these older guys new roles. How does Samir Dowdy adjust to being a primary guy? How does D'Angelo Purefoy adjust to be a primary scorer? Javon McCormick, you're now the starter now at point guard. And then, of course, Anthony McLemore and Austin Wiley. How do you balance those guys out? They're going to have to be a big pieces of the offense as well because Auburn lost 3 of their 4 best 3-point shooters. Yeah. And the line's back now. And your best scorers are not your best scorers, but more of your scorers are guys who kind of play down low. So what do you do in that case? And I think so the timeline is this non-conference schedule it's going to be kind of a wait-and-see mode. They're going to use some things to figure it out. Auburn should be favored or close to favored in pretty much everything they play in the non-conference. I'll make a prediction. They'll lose a game they're not supposed to lose to in the non-conference because they're still learning. Yeah. Don't panic when that happens. But I think this non-conference schedule is going to be they want to have a pretty good grip on what the rotation is going to be heading into SEC play, and this is what they're going to have to figure out because there's a lot of learning on the fly, especially in the early season for this crew. So is the goal for some of these lesser non-conference foes, I mean, does Auburn need to be blowing these teams out early? Like, should they go out and take care of business against Eckerd? And, I mean, I know they play a few lesser teams over the next few weeks. I mean, should Auburn fans be kind of expecting them to win these games by 15 to 20 points? Yeah, I mean, I think most of the teams they're going to end up playing is they're going to be able to handle them pretty easily. And one of the things I like about this team this season is defensively they got a great makeup to them. They might not be the freewheeling, high-scoring team that we've been used to seeing from Auburn because you don't have Jared and Bryce. You don't have Chuma. You don't have you got some three-point shooters, but the line's back now. You might have to work it down low a little bit more this season. Isaac Okoro, who could be your most talented player on the team, is not really a three-point shooter. I mean, he can do it, but he's a very much a drive and slash kind of three. Defensively, this team's going to be a whole lot of fun, and I want to see how much this season they rely on forcing turnovers and running the floor. Okay. Maybe not necessarily to shoot a ton of threes, but to get to the rim a lot more frequently. So I think Auburn should be fine in the early part of the season because I think defensively they should be really sound early. The guys they got coming back are all pretty solid defenders. We'll figure out what D'Angelo Purefoy looks like at the forward spot, but you can do a lot worse than building a team around guys like Samir and Javon, who were really good at steal percentage last season, and then guys like Anthony, who went on is a great rim protector. Austin Wiley is a great defensive rebounder. Get those guys out and run. And then Okoro, I'm telling you, it's not the sexiest thing to talk about when you're talking about basketball, but Auburn fans, watch Isaac Okoro play defense. It is going to be really, really fun to watch. If you want to know kind of the inside, some of the advanced kind of stuff about basketball, watch Isaac Okoro play defense on and off ball because he's one of a kind, really. Pearl has said it. He's only had one other player like him, and he was the Division II National Player of the Year when he was at Southern Indiana. Okoro can guard 1 through 5.
Yeah.
And to do that when you're 18 years old is very, very tough to do.
Yeah, that's special. No doubt about it. All right, Justin, I mean, kind of based on how you or whose power rankings you're looking at, a lot of folks expecting Auburn to finish about 4th or 5th in the conference.
Right.
What's your take on that? And who should Auburn fans be kind of looking out for this year?
So I voted in the All SEC, the media vote, and I had Auburn at 4th as well. I think Kentucky and Florida are the class of the SEC right now. Kentucky, they have that mix of they still have all the one and done talent coming back, but they got really good players coming back like Ashton Hagans, not PJ Washington, but the other guy that Reed. I'm blanking. I'll figure it out in a second. E.J. Montgomery who I was thinking of. They got guys they can build around, and those are usually the better ones of Calipari's teams whenever he's not having to do a complete reset.
Yeah.
Florida is going to be stacked this year. They got a lot back. Kerry Blackshear is an All-American that is transferring in to them. They got a really good recruiting class as well. So they've kind of separated themselves. Then there's a tier of where everyone else is kind of like they've got good foundation and great coaching. They got to figure it out. Auburn is one of those. How do you go without Jared and Bryce and Chuma? It's going to be a while to figure that out. Tennessee's going through the same thing right now. Both Bruce Pearl and Rick Barnes are excellent coaches. They got really good recruiting classes last season. They're coming in. Tennessee might have lost a little bit more because how much of their offense went through Grant Williams and Admiral Schofield, and they also lost Jordan Bone as well. And then there's LSU, which LSU has the talent, I think, to make a run at the SEC title, but who knows what LSU is going to be like this year with all the Will Wade stuff. They've got a really, really good team, even though they lost a couple of their main guys. So Auburn's in that tier right now. I
was about to say, LSU lost like most of their best players, did they not?
They returned like 4 or 5 like key contributors. But yes, they lost Tremont Waters and Nas Reed and Bigby Williams. They're big guys, but they bring back pretty much everybody else in their main rotation last season. Trenton Watford is on that team now. They're going to be a really good basketball team, depending on what all happens around them with kind of the noise. Then it just kind of drops off from there. There are really good tournament teams coming back like Ole Miss, Mississippi State, where you feel like, okay, they should be able to be solid this season, but like, they don't have the star power of some of these other teams. They haven't quite reached the heights of the Auburns and the LSUs and the Tennessees.
What about a team like Georgia? I mean, didn't they get a really talented guy in?
So Georgia and Alabama are going to be the two most fascinating teams in the SEC this year, I think. Georgia because you have Anthony Edwards. And if you don't know who Anthony Edwards is, top 3 recruit depending on who you look at. Probably going to be a lottery pick next season pretty easily. Georgia's roster is pretty much all brand new.
Okay.
And Tom Crean's a really good coach. He's in his second season. There's been some foundation laid there. How good can you be off of that? And then Alabama, there's 4 new head coaches in the SEC this year, and Nate Oates, I think, is the most exciting one of them. He's going to play a brand of basketball that's very similar to what Auburn's done under Bruce Pearl, and he's stepping into the best situation because the roster he inherits is much further ahead than the likes of A&M and Vanderbilt and Arkansas. So I think, and they didn't get Quinterly didn't get cleared, the Villanova transfer that they were really hoping for. I still think Alabama's got a shot to make it to the tournament this year, right off the bat with Nate Oates. They've got a lot of weapons coming back this year, so they're a little bit step behind because they don't have the foundation of an Auburn or a Tennessee or an LSU. But yeah, Georgia and Alabama have the best chance to upset that balance up there in the top of the league this season, and we'll see. I think Auburn. If you pick Auburn 4th, I know Auburn fans there's a lot of Auburn fans that were like, "How dare they pick us 4th? We just won. We went to the Final Four. We went to the Final Four." And I was like, "Listen, guys, listen. You just lost 3 of the best players you've ever had. Okay, you lost 2 very key rotation pieces, if not starters, along with it.
There's going to be a lot different on this team this season. Also, you finished 5th in the SEC last year and went to the Final Four. So people actually think you could be, quote-unquote, better in the regular season this season and still be after losing all that. So it's not
disrespect.
disrespect.
And odds are if you make the tournament, your road to the Final Four will be easier than it was last year.
If you get fourth in the SEC in the regular season, you get a double bye for the tournament, which is huge.
Mm-hmm.
And fourth in the SEC, you're probably a top 16 seed in the tournament. You're going to be a top 4 seed. Come March Madness. That is what you want to be at. Could Auburn click and be higher than that this year? Sure. I mean, I think a lot's going to depend on how good guys like Okoro are early. Could they drop off a little bit? Yeah, but I think this team is still very much a tournament team. It's going to be a work in progress, though. I think Auburn fans just need to be patient, especially in this non-conference schedule, because there might be some games where they blow out teams and you're not learning a lot, and there might be some games where you should be blowing out teams, you're only beating them by single digits, and people can go, wait, what's going on? Pearl's got a lot of work to do with this crew. A lot of teaching he's still got to do, and a lot of adjustments have to be made.
Justin, where can people find and hear all your stuff?
You can follow me on Twitter at jfergusonau. Read my stuff at theathletic.com. On Twitter I'll have the substitution rotations up again starting tonight, so I know a lot of people enjoy that. And you can listen to me on the lunch break. Most weekdays I'm on here. If not, Michael's filling in for me.
Right.
We always appreciate that. From 11 to 1 on ESPN 106.7 and ESPNAU.com.
Cool. Thanks for helping me out today, bud. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Take the over in the Auburn game.
What's it at?
52.5.
All right.
Yeah.
Taking the over? All right. Fantastic. Mike, where can people find you and hear you, bud?
Follow me on Twitter at CouchPavTato and in the Action Network app.
Sweet. And you'll be live on ESPN 106.7 after the game at Sky Bar tomorrow, so be sure to tune into that. If you're in town or on the ESPN 106.7 app, you can stream it live for 2 hours following the game. You can follow Painter on Twitter at PaintSharpless. Of course, he's on the lunch break as well. And follow me on Twitter at ZBlackerby. This has been another edition of the Locked On Auburn podcast.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
The Locked On Podcast Network has the ultimate NBA podcast starting 5. Starting at podcast number 1 is your favorite team's daily podcast from a local expert. Starting at the podcast number 2 is Locked On NBA, your daily 30-minute look at what happened the night before and what's upcoming. At the number 3 spot is Locked On Fantasy Basketball, the number 1 fantasy basketball show in the land. And the podcast number 4 position is Rejecting the Screen with Noah Kozlov and Adam Stanko. And finally, the big men in the middle, the unequaled Hollinger and Duncan NBA show with former NBA executive and analytics godfather John Hollinger. It's Locked On Podcast Network's NBA Podcast Ultimate Starting 5. Follow all 5 on your favorite podcast provider.